Well, hi everyone. I'm John Ritlin with a retro review of NWA Crockett Cup 1986 from the New Orleans Superdome. You had Bill Watts' UWF promotion and Jim Crockett Promotions. It was a bunch of tag teams and a couple title matches, and this event went 4 hours and 8 minutes. And it's in the Hidden Gems collection of the WWE Network. I will say that if you want to watch this, watch it in chunks, or just, trust my review if you want, just the opinion of one wrestling fan as to what matches you should pay attention to. Now, it is cool that they put this event on there because you get to see a bunch of tag team matches that you wouldn't have been able to see. And the New Orleans Superdome had a lot of prestige to it. The problem is there were starting to be fractures in Bill Watts' promotion due to financial difficulty with the oil bust and stuff like that. You can read up on that because the UWF would end up folding into Jim Crockett Promotions when they would buy the territory, I think like a year and a half later. It was just, it's kind of a really sad time because there were a lot of really good talents that came through there. But anyway, 4 hours and 8 minutes. That's how long this was. They joined it when match 6 started. So this would have been maybe a 5-hour show. Yeah, pretty goddamn long. So let's find out what matches are good. I'm not going to go over every detail because we will be here all goddamn day, but this was a mixed bag show. I'm glad to have seen it, but I'm never going to watch it again. That much I'll say. Sometimes the old shows age well. This one had some matches that still hold up today, and other matches were like, sweet Christ, let's get this over with. So, no commentary. No commentary at all for 4 hours, so make up your own commentary. Stan Lane and Steve Keirn, the fabulous one. Steve Keirn would later become Skinner. Stan Lane, Midnight Express Stan Lane. It's always kind of funny to see. He did have a career before, but it's just always kind of funny to see him before the Midnight Express versus the Fantastics, Bobby Fulton and Tommy Rogers, who were featured prominently in this tournament, and that makes sense because they were big here in the U.S. and also in All Japan. And it wouldn't be the only All Japan representation that we would see in this tournament. It was quickness versus good heel work. The Fantastics worked the arm. They were very good at, with quick tags and stuff like that. Fulton was the one that took the most of the beatings. And then Rogers eventually gets a roll up for 3. So there you go. That's the end of that. Rick Steiner, pre-Dogface Gremlin Rick Steiner, and Buzz Sawyer versus the Italian Stallion and Coco Beware. I don't want to say lazy Coco Beware, but pre-coasting Coco Beware. Because he was very, very good until, later in his WWE run, where he realized he could just be more of a character than he had to be, an impactful worker. And it was Side Headlock City. This was not very good. This was a match that was just drawn out for basically to fill time, I would assume. There was a suplex spot where Coco just lands on the concrete. Ouch. Buzz not taking care of people. Big shock. Buzz Sawyer not exactly the safest guy to work with, according to some people. And a power slam eventually pins the Italian Stallion 1, 2, 3. Cool. All right, good. We got this match over. Black Bart and gorgeous Jimmy Garvin with Precious versus Dave Peterson and Brett Sawyer, Buzz Sawyer's brother, who apparently was really good to work with from what I've heard on podcasts. I don't know. I'm not too familiar with Brett Sawyer. Had more hair than Buzz, say that much. It's ironic that he would have more hair than a guy named Buzz, Buzz cut, all that. A hair joke, do you get it? It's like I'm waiting for a live audience reaction. It wasn't awful. Of course, Black Bart lives do matter, as we all know. I can get so much hate for that one. Sweet Christ, I shouldn't be allowed to do shows on my own. I'm going to make this as uncomfortable as I possibly can. The tagline for the show, in other words. Weird Spike DDT pins Peterson, 1, 2, 3. And then the Midnight Express with Jim Cornette versus Nelson Royal and Sam Houston. Nelson Royal near the end of his career, I believe, because he got pinned quickly. This was like 3 minutes tops. Eaton hit Royal with, I believe, a double axe handle off the ropes, and then Dennis Condrey got the pin. So then we have Ron Garvin and Magnum TA versus Rick Steiner and Buzz Sawyer. So again, the first, number of matches were out. So it was like, you got tag teams that got to buy, like the Midnight Express got to buy, and you have first round matches and stuff like that. So we have Ron Garvin and Magnum TA versus Rick Steiner and Buzz Sawyer, and this was actually pretty good. This was a pretty good tag match. This is where things really started to pick up. And it wasn't like the Fabs versus the Fantastics are pretty good as well. So, those two matches are the ones out of the first 5 you really should check out. But it had some good star power and Buzz Sawyer. Garvin, did clean up after Magnum TA got beat up for a bit. And a belly-to-belly suplex from Magnum would eventually pin Rick 1, 2, 3. So they advanced. We then get Giovanni welcoming us to the evening show. So there was like basically half of the afternoon show, and they had an evening show a number of hours later that I assume people had tickets for, and then, more people bought tickets for the evening show. But apparently it wasn't, the financial success of this event wasn't as high as everybody was hoping. Cornette, I believe it was Jim Cornette and his co-host discussed that, and it wasn't very... It did decent, but it didn't do nearly as well. The Superdome shows, especially in 83, 84, before Junkyard Dog left, did a lot better. And by this point, things were starting to taper off. But it was still, and it was a lot of tag matches to put in front of people that were used to seeing varied up cards. And even though some of these tag matches were good, it was a misfire of a show, even though there was some good stuff. So Shivani welcomes us. JR goes over some rules. We go 1 fall, 20 minutes. That was all those. Draw, double DQ, or double count out, result in both teams being eliminated. The over the top rule, over the top rope. If you throw them over the top rope, it gets a DQ. I always hated that rule. I hated in the territory days. That's the one thing I hated. And I understand, and maybe that's just me having grown up, when I would see people thrown over the top rope, but it was just always dumb. It was dumb when they brought the rule back in WCW when Bill Watts came back. I get why territories did it, because you wanted to keep it in the ring and you wanted to only make it an attraction, like make it occasional when people went outside the ring and battled. But still, that's like one rule from the old days. It was really fucking dumb. And then Bruce Pritchard is the ring announcer, and I thought I smelled a big pile of bullshit. Bruce Pritchard, one of the biggest kiss asses ever in wrestling. He is one of the reasons why Vince McMahon is able to get away with a lot of that shit, because Bruce just regurgitates all the bullshit that he says. And you can tell the guy isn't any good at wrestling. He's not smart. If he knows stuff, he sure as fuck doesn't want to show it. He just wants to be Vince McMahon's yes man. And he infuriates me. It's like he's a lying sack of shit. You ever heard his friggin' podcast? He said the Triple H Booker T storyline wasn't a racist storyline. Whether the writers intended for it or to be that or not, it was a fucking racist storyline. And right there, I had about that much respect for Pritchard. And then once I heard that, I was like, done. This guy's fucking dead to me as far as I'm concerned. But he's also not a very good ring announcer, because he was stumbling over a lot of what he said. And I know I stumble over what I said, like I did right there. But guess what? I'm just a fan. I'm not a professional. I'm just a wrestling fan YouTuber. I'm not somebody that's been in the wrestling business that's supposed to be good at their job. And he's horrible at his job, except keeping it by kissing McMahon's ass. So anyway, that aside, Wahoo McDaniel and Mark Youngblood versus the Road Warriors. Gee, I wonder who won this one. Mark Youngblood got pinned after a big clothesline. And it was really funny because you had Hawk hit the clothesline, and then you had Wahoo get in the ring with enough time to break it up, and then just stands there. And then Animal just stands there standing across like, what the fuck was that? And it was just so ridiculous. I mean, Wahoo was almost done anyway by this point. He wrestled for about 20-something years. But it was just so odd. And then you get Chaska Whatley yelling at Jimmy Valiant, or yelling about Jimmy Valiant. Called him a white uncle something that I'm not going to say here. Yeah, I'm not going to say that, and please don't say that in the comments. Or there are certain things I won't say. And I think we all know what that is. It rhymes with calm. I'll say that in case you don't quite get it, but very uncomfortable. But whatever. Chaska was a black guy. I guess he can get away with saying that. It's just I'm not going to say it, because I was like, whatever. This was during the Paul Jones Jimmy Valiant feud that went on for about 25 years. It was actually, I think, only 5, but it felt like 25 years. And he runs down the women in the crowd. He yells a lot. And then here's Valiant with Manny Fernandez. And then we would get that tag match. I mean, Chaska would leave because I guess he cut off some of Jimmy's ponytail. Because that's what drove angles back then, was cutting off hair. Sometimes the old days don't age all that well. We get Ivan and Nikita Koloff versus Valiant and Manny Fernandez. The crowd loved Jimmy Valiant. It's hard not to love the Boogie Woogie Man, Jimmy Valiant. I mean, whether he's a face or a heel, he was really goddamn good. Even into his mid-40s, he was still really popular. And he got by on doing very little later in his career because he beat his body up so much and had traveled all over the world. And he was still so over. Manny took a lot of the hits, and then eventually Jimmy cleaned up, but he got hit with the Russian sickle while Nikita was outside the ring, and then Ivan tops him 1-2-3. That one wasn't worth checking out. And then Dr. Death, Steve Williams, and Terry Taylor were supposed to face Dino Bravo and Rick Martel, but Dino Bravo had appendicitis, apparently. I'm not sure if he had appendicitis or he was going to WWE. I'm not totally sure on the timeline, but maybe he did have legit appendicitis because Rick Martel came out, shook their hands, and Dr. Death and Terry Taylor won by forfeit. So they advance. And then we get the Sheepherders, the future Bushwhackers, with Jack Victory. I don't know why the fuck Jack Victory was there. Versus the Rock and Roll Express. Just weird to see the Sheepherders, having seen them as I was a kid, as the Bushwhackers, just as these lovable, the arm and that kind of stuff and everything. And that's the most you're going to get of me doing the Bushwhacker dance. It's just weird to see that, they had a whole nother career where they bled a lot. They were bloody brawlers. They were vicious. They were angry heels. They were able to almost incite riots in some other places. They were just that goddamn good, and they were vicious. And boy, this was something. I mean, the Sheepherders would win by DQ despite the fact that Victory does a run-in. They fight it off, and there's this flagpole stuff that's weird big old schmaz and everything, but the Sheepherders win by DQ, I guess because they saw the Rock and Roll Express using the weapons. So okay, weird, but whatever. So they win by DQ, and then the crowd starts chanting bullshit. And if I'm right, I think the Rock and Roll Express, I don't remember what the whole deal was, but I think they might have had a disagreement. It might have been a disagreement. They might have said, hey, we're just going to go with the Sheepherders being there because we wanted to have them. Now, we get to other matches, and the next 4 out of the next 5 matches are pretty goddamn good. So we get Arn and Tully versus the Fantastics. Shut up and take my money. This match was quite good. Fulton, of course, sells. Rogers, he finally gets in there and just cleans house. And I believe Fulton hits a drop kick, and then Rogers tops Anderson 1-2-3, which was quite good. Very, very well done, because Anderson had Rogers up for a power slam. It's like, I'm going to slam him, and then he gets drop kick. Oh, no, 1-2-3. I can't possibly get out of this, and 1-2-3. But it was a good match, as you would expect from these teams. Black Barton and Gorgeous Jimmy Garvin with Precious versus Giant Baba and Tiger Mask. Giant Baba had been wrestling for 26 years by this point, and Christ, it showed. And I'm not knocking. Giant Baba, one of the premier Japanese legends. Seriously, one of the premier Japanese wrestling legends. And did a lot for All Japan Pro Wrestling. And All Japan Pro Wrestling exists to this day in some form or another, and it still has some pretty good talent. But looking at what Baba was doing, he stepped back. By this point, he had stepped back from the main event scene, which probably was smart given the health issues and stuff that he was having. And also to concentrate on running it, and he would bring over a whole bunch of stuff like the Fantastics were over there, the Road Warriors. Road Warriors, I believe, were over there. Dr. Death and Terry Gordy. A lot of other people. Stan Hansen, talked very, very prominently about, Baba. Talked very highly of him. But Baba, by this point, was really just a guy that was just going to get in there and do a few moves, because he beat his body up for so many damn years. I mean, by this point, I think he was 48. And he would live to be 61. He would actually die 6 weeks after his last professional match, which was really sad, but left a hell of a legacy. So yeah, this isn't maybe the best use, or maybe the best way to see Baba, because he was definitely past the prime of his career, but you could tell he loved what he was doing. You had Tiger Mask here, and it just was what it was. A big boot eventually pins Bart 1-2-3. It was kind of sad to see Baba like this because he was hurting, but it admittedly wasn't a very good match. I mean, I'm trying to be kind here because the man is no longer with us, but the match wasn't all that good. You could skip this one. It's cool to see Baba among a big American audience, but he didn't really do all that much. We then get the Road Warriors versus the Midnight Express. And his team's always had good matches. Bobby bouncing around like a frickin' ping pong, pinball, whatever. And it looked like the Road Warriors were going to steamroll him. And, Midnight would get some shots in. And Cornette hits Animal with the racket. And he just goes down like he was shot. But the referee sees it, so it's a DQ. So the Road Warriors win. So that's a way to eliminate the Midnight Express, and I believe they were the United States Tag Team Champions at this point, so they had kept the championships and were, and not that the titles were on the line, but they kept them, and the Road Warriors advanced, and both teams benefited from that. We then get Ivan and Nikita Koloff versus Terry Taylor and Dr. Death Steve Williams. Another good match. Really enjoyed this one. It was a good power battle. It's weird to see Terry Taylor over. I wonder if the women knew what kind of guy he actually was. Read up about Terry Taylor. You know what I'm talking about. The crowd popped huge for Dr. Death Steve Williams and Nikita Koloff facing off. Ivan did take a lot of punishment before that, though. And eventually, the Russian sickle was hit, but that was right as the time expired. So it was 20-minute time limit. So both teams are, tossed out of the tournament. And then they brawled afterwards. And this match and another match, like the referee kept dinging, or the timekeeper kept ringing the bell. Ringing the bell ain't gonna stop the fucking match from, or stop a brawl from happening. Get some security out there, because ring the bell. Let's just ring the bell. Let's fracture our eardrums and the nearby, crowd, and the cameras if they're picking this up, because they got great microphones on there. But let's not send security out there to stop it. Let's just keep ringing the bell and shatter our eardrums. That's great strategy right there. That's one thing that always bothered me about wrestling. We'll just keep ringing the bell. It's not gonna fucking work. What the hell do you think? Like, they're gonna, it's like Venom. They're gonna, suddenly the symbiote's gonna be like, screaming. I can't believe I thought of that reference of all times right here. But anyway, it's still a good match, even with the time limit draw. We then get the Sheepherders versus the Fantastics, and holy shit, blood. We got Fulton, we got Luke bleeding. This was a little crazy. And a ref bump, and the flagpole to Rogers. It was a double DQ, so both these teams are tossed out. Luke bladed, if it wasn't a hard way, Luke bladed a little too deep, because he was bleeding quite a bit. Man, it's a good thing. I don't give Vince a ton of credit for some things, but giving the Bushwhackers, or giving them the Bushwhacker gimmick really extended their careers, because I don't think they could have done much of anything. By 88, they were so washed, because they beat their bodies up so much, so it elongated their careers. But yeah, there was some good blood in this. And then they didn't bother cleaning the mat at all. Because fuck diseases, right? They didn't care about that in the 80s. They did a lot of coke and they voted for Ronald Reagan. If you get that reference, I love you guys. So, Magnum TA and Ron Garvin versus Giant Baba and Tiger Mask. It wasn't very good either. In a belly-to-belly catch, it was Tiger Mask jumping off the ropes, and Magnum catches him, and belly-to-belly, 1, 2, 3. There was more to this, and it just wasn't worth mentioning. And then we get Jim Duggan versus Dick Slater, the UWF North American Championship, their top-tier championship. And it was mostly brawling. At one point, the guardrail got knocked down because Duggan got thrown into it. Makes sense. Duggan was about 280 at this point, and solid guy. If you want to see Jim Duggan before he became really goofy, I'm not knocking, because he made a lot of money in WWE and in WCW by being a goofy character. See him more of as a brawler here in Mid-South. He did quite a bit of good stuff in Mid-South. I'm not saying I was the biggest fan of Mid-South wrestling, but I can appreciate them letting wrestlers be be real people, and, get the audience drawn in that way. Eventually, he hits a 3-point stance on Dick Slater, which looked horrible. And the 3-point stance doesn't, when you got a 280-pound guy running at you, it can work. But it was like he did this and he did this and it's like his arm completely missed. It wasn't very good. And then we get Dusty Rhodes with Ric Flair, or Dusty Rhodes versus Ric Flair, rather. That would have been interesting to see them paired up like that. It was Paul Bosch doing the ring announcing for the ring introductions, that is, for the the NWA Championship. The North American NWA Championship. Is the NWA World Heavyweight Championship is what I was trying to say. And then, of course, Baby Doll was there. And Paul Bosch even said he's accompanied by the incomparably beautiful Baby Doll. Easy for me to say. I mean, maybe if you had cataracts in one eye and were blind in the other, then yeah, Baby Doll would be considered beautiful. She's a crackpot. I don't give a fucking shit what she'd think. I never understood why she was considered attractive. She had too much goddamn makeup on there. She had so much blush that her cheeks were as red as the goddamn sun. It was actually kind of frightening, and I don't know. Whatever. I just don't get it. It's like I see some women from the 80s, and they translate really well. Miss Elizabeth was absolutely beautiful. Baby Doll, no. Maybe you should bludgeon yourself in the skull enough, and even then you should still have enough cognitive ability to realize she isn't that attractive. And also is a crackpot. Did I mention that? And also really wasn't all that good. I mean, she made money for some reason, but if she had not been in Jim Crockett Promotions, you think that they wouldn't have been able to roll along just fine? I don't think she needed to be in wrestling, but is what it is. You know, you can't take that back. Not gonna have a time machine and go back and change that, because then it would fuck everything up. Just like, you know, when Homer had the toaster where he changed things in history. I'm really thinking of the weirdest ways to keep this review going in the non-funniest way possible. And I could make it uncomfortable, but now I'm just going to talk about how Flair and Dusty, of course, had a good match. Of course they did. Of course they both bled, and it would lead to, you know, figure four spots. It would eventually Flair got Dusty's boot off and hit him with the boot, and then he was struggling with Baby Doll. I don't know. Maybe she wanted to, you know, be near something that smelled better, so she wanted to be near the bottom of Dusty's boot. It probably smelled better than she ever did. Oh god, if she was passed around more than a goddamn college party joint, for God's sakes. Whew. Anyway, eventually Dusty would use his boot, hit Flair, referee would disqualify him, and Dusty hit him with the boot. So then we go with the Road Warriors versus Garvin and Magnum. It was nice. It was the finals. Thank fucking Christ, we're almost at the end of this goddamn thing. And Ron Garvin seemed to actually hurt his hand. He had hands of stone, but I think he legit punched one of the Road Warriors and actually hurt his hand because he was selling it. Because they went right to the goddamn finish. Or maybe that was by design and Ron was just really an expert seller. But we get a clothesline and Animal pins them 1, 2, 3. And they win the Crockett Cup. And then you get people out there celebrating. Okay, good. This event was over. It's not a bad event, but it's not an event I'm going to watch anytime again. Except maybe to see a couple matches. I saw it once, and I'm good. But it's cool that they put this on in the Hidden Gems section, and we'll see what happens. It was good for what it was, and I enjoyed it. Anyway, agree, disagree with what I said. Like, share, subscribe, Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Riplin. I'll see you soon.